Friends, our story begins in the Ardennes in December 1944, where the fog is so thick that the road is barely visible. An American supply convoy is heading toward Schönberg to deliver supplies. The driver, Evans, says everyone keeps talking about being home by Christmas, but his first sergeant immediately shuts down that hope. He reminds them that the Germans have just sliced straight through their front line, and they deliberately launched the attack in the worst possible weather, so the Americans would have no air support. In his mind, believing the war is already over is the most dangerous mistake they could make, and he is absolutely right. The truck gets stuck, and the first sergeant climbs out to set up the winch. Suddenly, the sound of a vehicle echoes through the fog. A moment later, SS soldiers surround them and take everyone down without warning. Standing among the fallen Americans, one SS soldier casually asks the name of the black American athlete who raced in Berlin, and the answer is Jesse Owens. Then they begin taking the American supplies, even their cigarettes, and leave their own wounded soldier Schmidt behind after taking his gun. Now the scene cuts to the front door of a house where our hero, Colonel John Castle, is standing. Mrs. Caldwell answers the door. Castle tells her that he got her address through a company called Galvin, and that he is there to discuss her pension plan. Mrs. Caldwell immediately becomes cautious because her lawyer already warned her not to speak with anyone connected to Galvin. During their conversation, we learn that Castle served with the 99th Division, 324th Engineers, and fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Mrs. Caldwell tells him that her son was there too, serving with the 761st. Then the real pain behind the conversation comes out. Galvin Industries is refusing to pay her pension, and the company knows she does not have enough money to fight them in court. Castle tells her that even the company's own file describes her as a top-of-the-line employee. Then he says something that opens the door to the entire story. He tells her he does not need a file to know that because he knows it firsthand. And that is where the story takes us back to the battlefield in 1944, where everything really happened. Captain Castle's Charlie Company is preparing to move out. Among them is Cash, who has already lost 3 fingers in the war. He is told that with $1 million wound like that, he is being sent straight home. Cash does not want to leave. He says the job is not finished yet, but Castle refuses to change his decision. Before leaving, Cash stops a new soldier and tells him that whenever he lights a lucky strike, he is supposed to burn the logo first. Friends, right now, this sounds like nothing more than a small habit, but remember this one detail. Then, with a little sarcasm, Cash reminds Castle that everyone in the unit knows the captain qualified for a deferment, meaning he could have stayed out of this war completely. Castle simply tells him that both of them came here to do their part. Just then, their colonel walks in and immediately has them bring out the maps. The order is clear. They have to block the road between Lanzerath and Elsenborn before morning is over, or the Germans could push directly toward the American fuel depots. The German counteroffensive has already been going on for 3 days, and it is massive. But the bigger shock comes next. The colonel tells them that the 1st SS Panzer Division is coming down that road, the same unit whose men once served as Hitler's bodyguards. According to him, these are not ordinary soldiers. They are extremely dangerous men. 2 days earlier, several American soldiers from the 285th had surrendered, and the SS lined them up and opened fire. Because of that, the colonel makes it clear that when dealing with the SS, they cannot expect the usual rules of war to protect them. He also explains how to identify them. They carry identifying tattoos beneath their arms, almost like they have branded themselves. Castle assures him that he will personally make sure the road gets blocked. The truck is loaded and the unit heads out. Now let's get to know the men traveling with Castle. Ramirez is the fast-talking guy from New York. Murphy is driving the truck with 400 pounds of explosives loaded in the back. Then there is Miller and Aventi, their radio operator, who has affectionately named his radio set Lassie. Leading the group is their first sergeant, whom everyone simply calls Top. These 5 men are Castle's entire world out there. On the road, Murphy asks Castle what his wife thought about him signing up, especially since Castle worked as an agricultural engineer back home and could have qualified for an exemption. Castle immediately shuts down the conversation. A little later, the truck finally gives out. The engine is flooded, and getting it running again could take an hour. They do not have that kind of time, so they continue the rest of the journey on foot. When they finally reach the target area, the work is divided up. Some of the men begin cutting down trees to build an abatis across the road, a barricade made from fallen trees designed to stop tanks from getting through, while the others begin placing mines. In the distance, the thunder of German 88s can already be heard clearly. The work is only halfway done when a sudden shot rings out. Murphy is the first one hit and he drops right there. The entire unit dives for cover, but non-stop fire is coming from above and no one can even reach him. They finally spot the position, an MG-34 machine gun nest about 300 meters away. Castle realizes that as long as that nest is active, none of his men can even stand up. He takes Ramirez with him and the two crawl through the snow until they are right beside the position. They silently count it out, 1, 2, and then a grenade goes in. The blast hits, and the machine gun finally goes silent. Now they begin checking the remaining Germans. One badly wounded German is lying on the ground, saying something. Ramirez cannot understand him, so Castle translates that the man is asking to be put out of his misery. Ramirez is about to do exactly that when suddenly comes the big twist. The wounded German is holding a grenade in his hand. Castle screams a warning. Ramirez throws himself over him to shield Castle completely, and the grenade explodes. When the smoke clears, Ramirez is gone. The situation has now completely turned against them. In the distance, Castle hears German vehicles approaching. He silently signals his remaining men to stay hidden, then ducks behind cover himself, his heart pounding so hard that he can actually hear it. Then the gunfire begins. And friends, by the time the shooting finally stops, everything is over. Castle himself has also been wounded. The man who was leading a 5-man unit just a few hours earlier is now alone, injured, and surrounded by the enemy. He drags himself toward a vehicle and tries to start it, but the engine keeps dying every time. Over the radio, HQ calls out, asking if he is still alive. But Castle cannot answer, because even a single sound could give away his position. A little later, a door suddenly opens. There is a German soldier inside, and Castle has neither the time nor the chance to reach for a weapon. The two immediately clash, and it turns into a brutal hand-to-hand struggle. When everything finally goes quiet, Castle is the only one left standing, gasping for breath and completely alone. Somehow, he gets his radio working and reports back to HQ. The mission is accomplished. All 5 of his men have been lost, and he is wounded himself. He asks for help and sends them his grid position, but the answer he receives feels even heavier than another bullet. HQ tells him that an entire enemy force now stands between him and them, so he will have to make his own way to the rally point at Elsenborn. Castle argues that such a long journey on foot is impossible and repeats that all 5 of his men are gone. But all he gets from the other side is an apology. He is told to make contact every hour, use the code, and conserve the radio battery, because that radio is now his only lifeline. And friends, this is where the movie turns into a full survival story. Wounded Castle keeps dragging himself through the snow and the empty wilderness, repeatedly telling himself that he is going to survive. Eventually, he reaches a farmhouse where a French-speaking family lives. He can barely manage to tell them that he is American. They bring him inside, give him medicine and food, and point to his map to show him exactly where he is. But even those few minutes of relief do not last. The sound of vehicles comes from outside, and SS troops arrive at the house. Castle hides and can do nothing except listen helplessly. The SS keep demanding the same thing, the location of the American fuel depot. The woman of the house refuses to tell them. Then a shot rings out. Her young daughter's scream echoes through the entire house. Castle rushes over, hides the little girl downstairs, and promises her that she is going to be okay. Now the soldier inside Castle takes over again. He takes down one of the SS soldiers, grabs their vehicle, and speeds away. Gunfire pours in from behind, rounds bounce off the vehicle, and even the family's dog starts running after him. Castle shouts for the dog to go back. Then suddenly the vehicle loses control and flips over. Castle is trapped inside the overturned German vehicle. His ears are ringing, he is bleeding, and he fights to stay conscious, telling himself that he is not going to die inside this German machine. He even begs God for help and somehow manages to pull himself out. Once outside, he finds the badly injured man who had originally brought him into the house. Then Castle goes back to the little girl. He tries to comfort her and tells her that the Americans are coming and that they will help her. He takes out his pistol and leaves it beside her for protection, telling her not to tell anyone because he could be court-martialed for it. But the apology he gives her before leaving is the heaviest part of the entire scene. He tells her that he should have come out sooner. Castle contacts HQ again over the radio. The answer is still the same. The SS are everywhere. His unit is fighting to hold its own position, and no one can come for him. He is simply told to keep moving in the same direction. The truth is, this man now has only two things left: his legs and that radio. The next few minutes are nerve-wracking. A German vehicle approaches and suddenly stops just a short distance from him. Soldiers climb out, talk among themselves, laugh, and Castle stays completely still in his hiding place. After a while, the vehicle starts again and finally drives away. He survived, but only this time. Up ahead, Castle stops inside an abandoned house just to catch his breath. But even there, he gets no peace. An SS soldier suddenly enters, and the two immediately start fighting. Then Castle realizes there are two more SS soldiers nearby. The first one is taken down by gunfire. The second goes down in an explosion, and once again, only one man is left alive. Now all Castle can do is keep moving. Farther ahead, he finally finds another living person, Sergeant Pierce, who has been hit twice. His truck still runs, but it is stuck. Castle gives him some water and starts working with the winch to free the truck. He keeps talking to Pierce the entire time, only to keep him from closing his eyes. Finally, Castle asks if he is ready to go home. Just then, an explosion hits nearby, and that question never gets an answer. Pierce passes away right there. After that, Castle continues forward with a horse, but soon he is caught in another round of shelling and his strength finally gives out. Lying on the ground, he can barely ask someone to take him home, and the name of his son slips from his lips: Hunter. That is when a man with his dog finds him, Sergeant Bellingham. He helps Castle up, looks at his wound, and tells him he has already lost far too much blood. He even repairs Castle's radio. Bellingham explains that he is carrying sealed position maps that must be delivered to General Lauer, but he does not know the general's current location. During their conversation, Bellingham says something strange about the Germans. He admits that Hitler is a monster, but then adds that he also gave Germany a strong economy and the Olympics. After that, the conversation becomes lighter, shifting to home, football, and how the Army-Navy game is almost like a holiday in his family. Castle opens up too, talking about his son Hunter and mentioning that his wife lost her brother at Midway. And friends, this is where something starts bothering Castle. Very casually, he circles back and asks Bellingham again which side he supports in that game. At the same time, HQ sends a coded message over the radio. Castle hands the paper to Bellingham and tells him that it contains HQ's position. Bellingham thanks him and takes it, and that is exactly where he gives himself away. Castle laughs and says he cannot possibly understand what he is looking at because it is SOI encoding, and a real American sergeant would know that. The big twist is finally revealed. Castle raises his weapon. He says nobody ever taught Bellingham the proper way to light a lucky strike, because American soldiers burn the logo so they do not leave behind an identifying mark for the enemy. Bellingham argues that smoking a cigarette differently does not make someone a Nazi sympathizer, but Castle cuts him off and says he is not a sympathizer at all. He is a full Nazi, born in America, and now fighting against Americans. Then Castle gives him one final test: raise his arm and prove there is no SS tattoo underneath it. The answer does not come from a tattoo. It comes from gunfire. The two begin firing at each other from point-blank range. Castle counts the few rounds he has left and keeps fighting despite his injuries. In the end, Castle is once again the one left alive, while Bellingham goes down. A short time later, American soldiers finally find Castle and carry him away. Even while barely conscious, the only thing he keeps asking about is his radio. At the field hospital, General Lauer personally comes to tell him that the abatis he built slowed the German advance and bought them several precious hours. Because of that, Castle is being awarded the Silver Star. Lauer also confirms that the man Castle encountered was an American-born SS operative trying to locate General Lauer himself. When asked how he figured it out, Castle explains that the man said several things incorrectly, and he never burned the brand on his lucky strike. But now comes the real emotional turn. Castle refuses to accept the medal because all of his men are gone, and in his mind, an officer's job is to protect his men, which means he failed. Lauer immediately tells him that is nonsense. He explains that soldiers are lost in war, and Castle's job was never simply to keep his men alive. His job was to help keep their mothers and their children alive. Outside, Castle meets Cash, the same man he had practically forced to go home earlier. Cash tells him their men went down bravely and that at least Castle survived. Castle gives one of the heaviest responses in the entire movie. He says he does not think surviving is quite as great a thing as people make it out to be. Now the story returns to Mrs. Caldwell's house. Castle explains that the fake sergeant had called it the Naval-Army game, when every American knows it is called the Army-Navy game. Mrs. Caldwell can hardly believe that Americans were actually fighting for the Nazis. Castle admits that running into one of them was incredibly unlucky, but he was still lucky enough to make it home alive. And friends, now comes the final reveal. Castle says luck certainly played a part, but without Lassie, none of it would have mattered. Mrs. Caldwell laughs and asks how he could possibly claim that she was the one who built that radio, since she only worked on Galvin's assembly line. Castle immediately recites every detail from memory: the production unit number, assembly line, station, batch, date of issue, and even the name of the woman supervising that line that day, Rose Caldwell. When she asks how he could remember all of that, he says he remembers it the same way he remembers his children's birthdays. Then Castle places a document in front of her, $9,000. The same settlement she has been fighting to receive for years. Castle explains that he reminded the company that he is responsible for all United States Army radio equipment purchases across the country, so it would be in their best interest to listen to him. Otherwise, he could simply find another supplier. Before leaving, Castle says something that captures the entire meaning of the film. 80 years from now, people may know exactly what happened in that battle, but the real question is whether they will truly understand it. Mrs. Caldwell can only say that she hopes they will. In the film's final scene, Castle finally reaches the place he wanted to return to throughout the entire war, his home. He puts his son Hunter to bed and playfully asks him who loves him. The boy laughs and answers. Then the lights go out and Castle is left alone. To the outside world, he is a hero who earned the Silver Star, but inside, part of him is still standing on that frozen road beside the 5 men he lost. And maybe that is the real message of the film. Medals can tell us what a man accomplished, but they can never tell us everything he had to lose in return. Now tell me, if you were in Castle's place, would you have accepted that medal or turned it down?